Okay. Since Steve said I'm Ben Krebs. I'm an engineer for the Planning Commission. Just want to get that out there. I'm not a planner, but I've been involved in planning, water quality, different things for about 20 years. So what I'm going to cover today is generally the planning process. What do planners do? How does planning and zoning affect water quality? How they interact? Talk a little bit about developers, engineers, contractors, and local government and the interactions there. Zoning and development regulations, how their ordinances are created, and then how the community can get involved. Areas that coordinators could help make change. So what do planners do? The goal of planning is to maximize the health, safety, and economic well-being of all people living in our communities. I guess that's a statement by the American Planning Association. Overall, role of planners, planning department is to implement zoning and development regulations in adherence to the community's goals and objectives as documented in the comprehensive plan. Now, I will talk quite a bit about the comprehensive plan, but on a day-to-day basis, that is what the goal is for planners. Planning is set up by KRS 100, which is enabling legislation. It allows process to occur. It's got the goal of plan before you change. And planning units, planning commissions may be city, county, joint city-county. There's regional planning bodies. It's important to note that not all communities, not all counties have a planning commission, so you can be in or out. Here's an overview of the KRS 100 legislation, and I'll talk about several of these as I go through here. In general, the organization starts at the top is the Planning Commission, which is a citizen board. They are formed by 5 to 20 member community citizens from different parts of the community. They can serve up to 2 4-year terms, or 11 years max if they take over for somebody else. So it is an investment. If you sign up for it, you're typically on for 4 years. Most commissioners that I've worked with, they do their whole 8 years. So once they get involved, they usually stick with it. Under the Planning Commission, you typically have a planning department staff, planners, office administration, things like that. You can have an engineering department. That's kind of my role in the Planning Commission, reviewing engineering plans and making sure the engineering requirements for subdivisions are met, and then inspecting the work as it's ongoing. Many departments have GIS groups, GIS technicians that keep everything together, provide the data in the mapping, provide maps for the community, maintain maps, coordinate for aerial mapping and things, and then all of these, everybody in the planning department has to network with other government departments and committees. So it's not an isolated group. We're involved with other utilities, public works, parks department, the emergency management, through many different ways. General role of the Planning Commission is to advise the local government on zoning. The local government has to vote on zoning changes. Planning Commission provides a recommendation for that. Planning Commission reviews land use regulations and community development, evaluate land use and development issues in short and long term. Big thing, the basis for the whole planning planning process, what starts everything is what it's all based on is the comprehensive plan. It's the big picture for the community. It's what does the community want to be in terms of growth? How much growth? Where? When? What does it look like? How are the needs of the community going to be met? How are these funded? The comprehensive plan needs to be forward-looking. What's at least 5 to 20 years. It contains written goals, objectives, and then kind of puts it all in summary with maps that show the different types of land use. So here are some of the things required for the comprehensive plan: goals and objectives, land use, what is allowed where, transportation, how that fits in, community facilities, military, which may or may not be in a part of the community, but it's one of the plans. It doesn't have to be fleshed out as far. But research is required: population, demographics, economic surveys, mapping. What's here now? What is being planned in the next 10 years? So all that information is put together into this comprehensive plan. So like I said, this is the community's plan. It is committees are set up of community volunteers that provide the input. The planners are not writing or not coming up with all the ideas. The planners help facilitate the meetings, help keep the committees going. But it's the community's ideas that are put into the plan. Various committees are, again, land use, infrastructure, ag, environmental committees, growth, heritage, urban form, multiple ways you can get involved. So here's an example of an existing land use map. So this would be used. Say here's where we are right now versus a zoning map. The zoning map is set up from the comp plan. Here's what the current zoning is. Here's what this area of property can be used for and what intensity it can be used for. What really comes out of the comp plan is a future land use map. So in the next 5 years, what is the community open to for change? What areas can we grow in? And that's what you'll find on the future land use map. Now, for something to be a different zoning to take place, it has to be supported by the comprehensive plan and has to show up on the future land use map that's in the plan. Current planning, which is the day-to-day operations in the planning office, again, overall goal is to implement land use regulations that are guided by the comprehensive plan. So that creates, comprehensive plan is where ordinances are started. Ordinances include the zoning ordinance, subdivision development regulations, can deal with landscaping, land use buffers between different zones, signage, environmentally sensitive lands. How do we look at those? What do we need to study? How can they be developed? So the zoning ordinance is what establishes the zoning map, and it's the baseline rules that are tied to each different parcel as far as like whether it can be used for residential, for commercial development. It's going to remain as ag, if that's what it is. And part of the zoning rules, zoning ordinance is what's the intensity this can be developed at. The other part of ordinances, I guess two different sides. We are a planning and zoning So we have subdivision development regulations as well, and that kind of lays out the rules for how things are built, kind of the engineering design guidance for public facilities, utilities, stormwater management, and finally get to water quality. What do developments have to do to protect that water quality? And then there could be other specialty regs such as a big ordinance regulation is floodplain flood damage prevention. That is typically housed in the subdivision development regulations, or could be part of the zoning as well. But that's one most communities have. Other duties of current planning, daily things is amend and draft new land use regulations. Big, depending on how much growth is in a community, is reviewing development proposals. All the different steps of review that have to occur. Planners will also staff different boards and commissions. Board of Adjustment is one. Board of Adjustment is set up by the KRS, and it allows for variances and dimensional provisions laid out by an ordinance. It approves the board may approve non-conforming uses. So if something doesn't fit with the rules, or it's an appeal brought about by a decision in the rules, someone can apply for a Board of Adjustment hearing, and that is very time consuming in a planning office. Other things, they coordinate always local, state, regional, federal agencies on different developments and what's being planned, what's going on. And a lot of times the planning office is responsible for writing and managing grants for new planning and infrastructure projects that are proposed, things that are pointed out in the comprehensive plan. And then basic daily zoning ordinance administration, that is all the phone calls. What can I do with my property? What's the potential here? Can we do an initial review? A lot of calls from developers, realtors, and just overall general questions. So the other side of planning is long range. I won't talk much about this, but part of that is guiding the periodic update of the comprehensive plan. Planners serve to set up committees. They do the background research that goes into pulling all the data for the committees to get a whole picture of what's going on. Another interesting part is completing small area studies. These are generally out to like a maximum of 20 years, but you're looking at the specifics for a certain use. Some of the things have been done in Scott County. You see the Legacy Trail below, and where Georgetown would like to have the trail extended into Scott County, and what that would look like. There's a study that's been done. Transportation for an area, northeast Georgetown. Sadieville is one of our small cities in the county, and these are just bringing out more details than you would find in the comp plan, and just spending time for certain issues for a certain area. So where does water quality, planning zoning fit with water quality? So first off, planning zoning guides and regulates the land use decisions, what's allowed to happen, and the intensity of development on the land affects runoff and major effect on water quality. How developers are allowed to use the land, to whether they have to treat the water or not is definitely has an effect. Planning office helps provide enforcement of regulations and making developers, contractors adhere to other state and federal regulations that affect water quality. Creation of new regulations, new ordinances that can impact water quality, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Common ordinances that are in effect, the zoning ordinance, which is the land use intensity, floodplain, flood damage prevention ordinance, where can have an effect on water quality by the protection of the streams and requirement for stream buffers, and just keeping development away from the areas you want to preserve. Environmentally sensitive areas protection. I know every area, community, county has environmentally sensitive areas, whether stream areas or karst or other related, that need ordinances for protection. And then stormwater management. There's different ordinances related to that affect water quality, come out of the planning office. So this next slide is just an example from the Scott County Comprehensive Plan. This shows the environmentally sensitive lands, shows what actions are going to be desired in the next 5 years, and what goals are written that support the actions. And some of the items you can see on here are floodplains are labeled as environmentally sensitive. There's sinkhole areas, karst areas that are listed. There's a couple groundwater basins that were shown, and then northern part of the county has a lot of steep slope areas that would be tough to develop, and development could provide severe sediment runoff, things like that. Here's another example, one of the long-standing goals in the comprehensive plan, and one that has been supported in most part by the community, by the politics of the community, and that's for the presentation of land in the southern part of Scott County to preserve prime farmland, and it serves to place a buffer around the stream, King Run Stream, and just reduces intensity of development other than ag in the part of the county. Two other examples of water quality through the planning is this map here shows the Royal Spring Aquifer in Scott County, and then extending on into Fayette County. The Royal Spring up at the top portion of this area is what provides a significant source of drinking water for Georgetown, and it's important that we protect this area. And the other map shows a proposed reservoir for a backup water supply that was planned. Now this project is an example of good planning that does not always go as planned. All this property in green was purchased by the county for this reservoir, but it did not get federal approval, and is now as kind of like a park area. People use it for hiking, biking, things like that. Overall, the development process, real quick, there's the pre-design. This is when the developer hires a consultant engineer to determine the best use of the land that they have or about to purchase, and that when they think they've got a plan, they typically approach local government to obtain preliminary approval, determine what permitting is going to be needed, and kind of they do their homework, try to figure out what type of infrastructure is going to be needed and all that. The next step would be to actually proceed forward with design development, and through that is start obtaining permits, plan review for construction of infrastructure, deal with stream impacts, whatever permits are needed with there. And most of this coordination review is going through the local government, generally through the planning office. Once construction gets started, the contractor kind of takes over the site, responsible for installing, maintaining BMPs at that time. The engineer is still involved, generally providing inspection, and then local government will also provide review and final sign off at the end of the project. So what is the motivation of responsible parties? So I'm sure there are a lot of different motivators, a lot of different reasons developers do things the way they do. But overall, in all of these, profit is always going to be the main factor in what gets completed. For the developer, they have to have a return on investment. That can be what is needed most at the time for the community, or it can be the most intense use of the property. Engineers are looking at the most efficient design for safety and practicality, but that has to fall within the developer's budget. Contractors they provide acceptable projects, hopefully on time and at the lowest cost. Balance the cost, quality, time equation is their main goal. Local government's a little bit different, but they're looking for the best quality project that provides for the community needs and welfare. It is balancing what future revenues versus what are the service needs going to be in the future. Jobs, real estate versus future safety, maintenance, transportation needs. All that has to be considered by the local government in the planning process. So, why are we not seeing more green infrastructure? These are my thoughts on it through years of working with different developers. Overall, green infrastructure still costs more. Increased construction cost, and a lot of times that is just the reduction of usable space. Green infrastructure takes a little more room than something hard, a treatment device or some kind of filter. It's going to cost more, use more space. From engineers, what I hear, it is green infrastructure is still not the current standard practice. It's becoming more widespread used in some communities, but it still adds time to design, creates unknown factors. For contractors, I think a lot of those, unless you've got a specialty contractor, a lot of contractors still do not understand green infrastructure. A contractor is trained to compact all soils, make sure that drainage does not pond or infiltrate into areas on site. That's not the case with all contractors again, but in general, that's where I think we still are as far as green infrastructure goes. So Development practices only really change when the community changes ordinances. Development is strictly going to follow the rules that are in place that for everyone that provide that benchmark. And the deviation from standard creates uncertainty. And new design techniques can affect approvals. They can take more time if research has to be done, and affect public acceptance. The developer proposes putting a large wetland in. People are going to worry about it being behind their house. What's gonna make a community proceed or try to pass or adopt water quality ordinances? Sometimes driving factor can be to meet higher standards from a state or federal level. Examples of that is Clean Water Act, Phase 1, Phase 2 communities have been pushed to develop higher standards to be compliant. Another, the National Flood Insurance Program, is to obtain community flood insurance, you have to pass a higher recommended ordinance to be a part of that program. Another issue is that another reason they may pass an ordinance is there have been past problems, issues over and over again from development, where the public you get public outcry is taken to the government, and they realize we need to do something about this. That can be from flooding, erosion controls that you see from development. Community may be worried about loss of water sources, natural resources, due to proposed development, and that could drive an ordinance. Just the threat of development may be enough to get the public involved and take that to the government. So, what does it take to get an ordinance passed? The first thing is that any major change like that must be supported by the overall community plan, the comprehensive plan, somewhere in the goals and objectives. The background of what's being done needs to be supported there. Any change like this requires community feedback. Committees need to be formed. I'll talk a little more about committees, but there's going to have to be public hearings, and community surveys are very helpful to see where the community is, where they stand on if there's support for an ordinance. And then last, the government body has to adopt the ordinance and have a public hearing and actually take the vote, support and approval. So community feedback, to obtain community feedback, when you form your committee to review the ordinance, committee needs to be broad-based. The different voices in the community, you need to have somebody from real estate market, design professional, maybe housing, HOA, HBA. You need to have political support or political voice as well. The committee needs to be educated. If not, you need to spend time providing that education. What's the background on this? Why is this needed? You need people with a community voice on your committee. Community leader, established designer that's in the community that has respect. An HOA president can provide that leadership voice. Public hearings, need to be advertised, need to put out sufficient information to generate response. You want to get some phone calls. Hopefully they're positive. May not always be so. You need to provide sufficient background education to there can be a lot of miseducation on a new ordinance, why it's needed. You need to make sure that it's spelled out. Need to allow for all sides to express an opinion. It may take multiple hearings, multiple public meetings to get the support you need for an ordinance. Challenges may be faced with opposition to change by developers or landholders. The design community may come out against if you're demanding a certain type of water quality or taking away design options that have been used in the past. Negative public sentiment could be a reason. Water quality be hard to pass a water quality ordinance. And you need to justify a need for a change. What's the benefit versus the added costs that may be associated with this. So here's my example of what happened in Georgetown. So this map right here, if you can see the dates at the bottom, kind of census dates, size of the community anyway. You see in 1987, well, prior to 1987, this was the majority of the developed Georgetown, and then Toyota came in 1985 with this block up here, and since then it is at least doubled in size. So Toyota came in, they had higher standards, way higher than anything that was there were generally no regulations in place at Georgetown at the time. Toyota looked at all the environmental impacts and created a development with minimal impact to the surrounding streams. So that led several years later, Georgetown is faced with the development pressure for housing, for support businesses, but a lot of development pressure, and they decided we need higher standards for this development coming in to protect the community, to protect these streams that are in. So they started looking at a new stormwater control ordinance, one that, in addition to not only quantity controls, reducing peak flows to pre-development flows on a project, but requiring water quality, everything from an impervious surface to be treated in some manner, a manner relevant to what the development, the pollution may come off the development. And then one requirement that was almost unheard of in Kentucky, at least at the time, is a infiltration requirement. We called it our groundwater protection, since there are a lot of small streams and those streams are fed by the groundwater. We did not want to lose our streams, so we passed this infiltration requirement. Toyota provided support and committee involvement, supported the ordinance, and provided a real example of how a large-scale development could occur with minimal impact. Toyota, when they came in, can control every drop of water that would come off of their site with large ponds, and they had testing in place, and even the ponds were so large that water harvesting could take place if necessary, if they had a need for it. little bit on watershed coordinators and planning. How can a watershed coordinator affect change in their community? These are my recommendations. Number one, become involved in the comprehensive plan review every 5 years. Be a part of the environmental committee, the land use committee, whatever, but sign up, share your voice, share the information that you have with others. 2, make contact with planning staff. Introduce yourself, phone call, get on the website, follow Planning Commission hearings. Just be aware of what is the new developments that are coming. Ask questions from the staff. If there's regulation changes being proposed, find out what they are. See if you can get involved on a committee to review those. Last, share the information that you have. If it's testing, if it's areas you know that there's a need for a project within the water bodies, planners are not. They don't know everything that's going on in the community. They're aware of a lot, but if you have this information, share it. So that concludes mine. I would be open for any questions if there are any.